Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 183rd ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Rebel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle
DeVries.
How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm great, Cam. Seems like we were just here. We did like a 3-hour episode a couple days ago or something like that, and we're right back here again.
Last time we complained about the fact that it was cold when we returned to Springfield from vacation, all three of us, and now it's warm. Winter's over.
I wouldn't be too sure about that.
Winter's over.
I don't know. You're saying dangerous things over there.
I'm all in on winter being over.
Well, don't look at the forecast.
Yep. Who's going to tell them?
Everything will be fine. There's no freezing temperatures in the forecast.
Just don't look outside or go outside, and you won't know the difference.
It's nice out right now.
Yeah.
We should be recording outside.
I thought so, too. You think Mizzou would ever let us record at the 50-yard line?
Like mid-game?
No.
I was going to say, if it's mid-game, probably no.
It's like a lovely Thursday evening.
I'll email him.
Okay, let's figure it out.
See what we can do.
Yeah, we'll drive up there, take all the equipment.
If we recorded in the middle of the freaking football field, yeah, we'd be driving up there.
Yeah, I'm just saying that'd be a pretty big hassle and headache, potentially.
How would we If they said yes, you would say, never mind. That's what you're telling me?
I'm just saying it would take some planning.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Okay. We'll work on it. Kyle, last episode, we really made the case for getting rid of Cuonzo Martin, mutually parting ways with Cuonzo Martin. And we didn't make as big of a case for keeping him because we both think it's time to move on. But this week, we're talking about who might replace him if they do move on. Obviously, we don't know anything more than anybody listening to this as far as what the athletic director's decision-making process will be in that. We're just thinking it's time for a new face. And if you want to hear why, listen to last episode. We might touch on a few different things as we go, but this is primarily focused on the coaches that are out there that might be, interested in coming to Columbia, and guys that Missouri can afford, and we'll see where it goes from there. There's been a lot of like top 5 lists and wish lists and hot boards and stuff all over Mizzou Twitter. So we're finally getting in the game and naming some coaches that we'd like to see in Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, it almost seems like premature to like spend a whole, hour plus or whatever we're going to spend talking about potential names as a replacement when we aren't even 100% sure that Cuonzo's going to be here or not. We could talk about all these names and then they retain him, which would be interesting. But, I think we feel fairly confident that there's going to be somebody else here next year. And you know what? It's time to start talking about names, because once a decision's made, it's going to go really fast. And you're going to start hearing all kinds of names and rumors. And so we wanted to prepare you for the names you're probably going to be hearing and who we think would be a good hire and maybe who isn't realistic or is realistic, all that stuff. So we're going to discuss a lot of names today.
Before we jump into all of that, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube or leave us a review on the podcast platform that you listen to us on. That helps a lot. We would appreciate it. And, of course, if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do that through our Patreon page, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. One thing I wanted to talk about before we dive into all the names, first of all, there's not really any just weekly news for us to talk about. This is basically coaching search part 1 before the coach, while we still have a coach episode. But speaking of the coach that we currently have, I thought it might be worth just walking back through his career and just how he has moved from job to job so far in his career, and see if that might give us any clues as to what might happen this time. And obviously his first head coaching job was here in Springfield at Missouri State, and then he, after a successful season, They won the regular season, but then got upset in the conference tournament, so they didn't make the NCAA tournament. But then Cuonzo replaced Bruce Pearl at Tennessee, which...
Tough shoes to fill.
Absolutely. And the Tennessee fan base they were firmly on Bruce Pearl's side when he left and was, penalized by the NCAA and had a show cause sanction where any school that hired him within a certain amount of time would have to face penalties and stuff. So he was kind of going into a weird situation with sanctions and a coach that was...
Like a fired up fan base for a different person.
Right. A fan base that was in love with the previous coach and wanted him to still be there. I found an article talking about, like, from a Tennessee fan's perspective of them bringing in Cuonzo. And this article that I found was optimistic and kind of like, well, the Tennessee program is in a weird spot with the sanctions, so... we may not be able to get the guy that's on the top of everybody's list. So this guy's been successful. Let's see what he can do. And he took them to a Sweet 16. They had NBA players on that roster. But I think the entire time that he was there, the Tennessee fan base wanted Bruce Pearl. They were mad that he couldn't be the coach there anymore. And so it seems to me, and a lot of the reports from around that time, indicated that Cuonzo just did not really feel comfortable there, and when he had an opportunity to basically resign from his post there and take the head job at Cal, he just jumped on it because it seemed like a more secure spot for him, less headaches with the fan base and stuff.
For sure. Not fired.
Correct.
Chose to leave.
Yes. And then went to Cal, was there for 3 seasons. I should mention 3 seasons at Missouri State, 3 seasons at Tennessee, 3 seasons at Cal. We talked a little bit last week about, they had a really good team with Ivan Rabb and Jaylen Brown, got upset in the NCAA tournament. And then same thing happened again. He was not fired at Cal. He left Cal to take the Mizzou head coaching job. And we can look back also in Missouri history at Frank Haith, who was not fired from Missouri, but left to take the head coaching job at Tulsa. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is I'm wondering, obviously we know the wording of Cuonzo leaving, if that happens a week from now, will be mutually parting ways. But I guess my question to you, Kyle, is I wonder how much of that will be something that Cuonzo actually sees is in his best interest moving forward.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, and just pointing out the fact that coaches are so often really well aware of the writing on the wall potentially and knowing what could happen in their future. And obviously Frank Haith is a great example of that. And I don't know, just having the awareness to know, like, this is probably my best opportunity to take a different job that is still a reasonably good job. And Cuonzo obviously did that multiple times in his career. I wonder if that is something that he's thinking about now. And obviously it's probably a little bit different situation. He obviously would not be able to, like, upgrade jobs right now, which is something he kind of did. I don't know. Would you say Cal is a step down from Tennessee?
I would agree. Yeah.
So something that he's probably fairly potentially okay with. He's making great money right now. He's not hurting for cash. I wonder if
he's going to make great money if he's no longer the coach.
Right. There's going to be some financial implications, of course, but I wonder if Cuonzo would be willing to go to a step down somewhere to be able just to avoid everything that's going on right now and maybe avoid getting fired or...
I'm thinking about how I'm trying to put myself in his shoes and how miserable it potentially would be to coach all of next season.
Right, exactly.
With a fan base that is completely over
it's done.
It. Yeah. And just how empty the arena has been. Like, how do you repair that with the same coaching staff? If he were retained...
And the same disappointing group of players.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of mean, but...
Yeah, well, the wins and losses.
Right. It's a roster he assembled,
yeah.
But has to, at this point, be thinking there's a pretty low ceiling for this group of guys.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of roster turnover to be had. I mean, there's maybe 3 spots potentially that a transfer could come in and make an impact.
With his contract situation, could he actually even realistically leave right now? Like, could he just take another job right now? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the buyout situation on the other end is way more manageable. If another school wanted to scoop him up, it's nothing like $6 million for them to make that happen. The financial burden is much more on Mizzou getting rid of him side than it is him terminating the contract to go somewhere else.
But it would probably have to be a school that fired their coach pretty early in the process.
Yeah, probably.
For the timeline to make sense.
Right. Yeah, so that is something to think about. We didn't really touch on that much in the last episode, so I just wanted to bring up the reality of the situation that the fan base is kind of over Cuonzo, the arena's empty, and how much will that weigh on his mind when he's kind of deciding what's best for his future.
Does he want to come back?
Right. Yeah. That was a long way of asking that question. So I don't know how you want to do this. There's so many names across college basketball that make some kind of sense as the next coach at Mizzou. We both assembled a top 5. Mine's very wishy-washy because there's
varying levels of how realistic is this.
Yeah. And we'll talk through how realistic some of these people are and how exciting they would be as a hire, I guess. So I don't know. How do you
maybe
want
we
to
should
this?
Should we kind of categorize it by some up and comers and then maybe some guys that have already been out there?
Sure. Yeah. So we have kind of like established coaches who've been around the block. Maybe they've coached Power 5. They've coached, NCAA tournament teams, stuff like that. And then we have kind of more up and comers. Actually, all of the mid-major coaches on my list are under age 50. And all of the guys that have been around a little bit are over age 50.
That makes sense.
Nobody too terribly old, though.
Yeah.
That definitely went into my thinking.
No Jim Boeheim?
No. There's I don't know. There's a few coaches that have been around forever that have been in and out of coaching sometimes. I mean, not even to the level of Rick Pitino, who we might mention later, but I can't even think of the guy's name. John Beilein, who coached at Michigan and then coached the Cleveland Cavaliers.
That's literally who I meant to say.
Oh,
and
okay.
I said Jim Boeheim. John Beilein.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That's literally who I meant to say.
Okay,
because he's not coaching right now.
Right.
He's a name I've actually seen thrown out there.
Yeah, yeah. But he's I
old.
don't know. He's pretty old.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. He seems like he might be done with college basketball and recruiting and all that kind of stuff, but I guess you never know.
That could have been so much worse by me saying somebody else's name. That just happened to be an old college basketball coach that I said on accident.
They're just all the same.
I was really lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, it made a little bit of sense at least. So do you want to talk about, let's get the established names out of the way first that people have heard of.
Yeah.
One name that I want to talk about that is going to be on people's lists, and it's definitely somebody you've heard of, is Chris Mack. And I want to mention him first because I don't think it's a good fit at Mizzou, but if there was some kind of connection there and they wanted to make a run at him, I don't think it would be the end of the world. He, let me pull up his profile here.
Was coaching Louisville earlier this season.
Yes,
but
he
got fired
recently fired from Louisville. It was kind of made to seem like it was due to off the court stuff, but I think the off the court stuff was just a reason to get rid of him because he was not performing on the court.
They're looking for a reason.
Yeah. So obviously he previously coached at Xavier, took them to the NCAA tournament all but 1 year that he was the head coach there, from 2010 to 2018. They went to an Elite 8 and 3 Sweet 16s in his time there. And his last season there, they were a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So obviously He was a perfect match for Louisville when that position came open. And his first season there, they were a 7 seed, won 20 games. Second season, Ken Pom says they would have been a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament that was canceled. They won 24 games. Last year, they only played 20 games total. They were 13-7, 59th in Ken Pom. And then this year, they definitely took a tumble. He won 12 games before he was let go. They were 12-17.
Still more than Missouri has won all season.
True. And the Ken Pom rating was 139, which that's like Mizzou this year territory, obviously. I think he's a really good coach. The off-the-court stuff is like you could make a documentary about it because it's very strange. His assistant coach blackmailed him, basically, or was trying to blackmail him. And his assistant coach is, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he was like a former ESPN analyst who was also a coach. And he was assistant coach under Chris Mack at Louisville and sort of tried to like blackmail him or extort him for some reason.
It's the kind of guys you want in your program.
Yeah. And then Chris Mack didn't tell anybody about it, that this was happening. So it was like a private matter between the two of them. And Mack recorded a phone call. And so that's actually what he got in trouble for from Louisville, was like secretly recording this phone call and trying to deal with this whole blackmail situation without,
privately.
Yeah, without notifying anybody.
Weird.
At least that's the way I was able to understand it from reading a few articles. So that's not the end of the world. I have anecdotally read some things that he's like really hard to work with and just not a great guy.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a situation that Mizzou really wants to get into, but I don't think it's something that will keep him from coaching again.
Yeah, I don't know if the reward is worth the risk in this situation.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, it'd be different, I think, if he was just like posting 20-win seasons, 25-win seasons.
Yeah.
If they were like, 20-2 when he was let go, it'd be a little bit different. But that would also mean that he probably did something worse to be let go if he was that successful on the court. So Chris Mack, not going to be on my final list of candidates that I want to take seriously. He was also making $4 million a year at Louisville, which is a lot and more than Cuonzo's making right now. So financially, it also probably doesn't make sense, although he's not going to command that when he does get back to coaching. So I'm going to cross Chris Mack off the list. And while I'm at it, unless you have any objection, I'm going to cross Greg Marshall off the list.
Yeah.
That's a name that people are going to throw out there. Literally lost his job because of multiple accusations of abusive actions towards players.
I think some racial slurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Big no thanks on that.
Yeah. And
his
honestly,
wife's crazy.
I've heard that as well.
Which is
There's
completely
been actual
irrelevant.
articles written about like
How crazy
the
she is.
craziness of the family.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he coaches again. He was making so much money that he never has to coach again.
Yeah.
But Chris Mack, I think, coaches again.
Right.
I don't know about Greg Marshall.
I don't think so.
All right, you give me somebody that's been around the block, kind of an established name, if you got one.
All right, I got a guy for you. His name is Sean Miller. Sean Miller is currently not employed, but he was with Xavier again from 2004 to 2009. So 5 years he was there. They went to 4 NCAA tournaments. They were the Atlantic 10 regular season champs 3 times. He went to 1 Elite 8, 1 Sweet 16, then went on to coach at Arizona, which is probably where most of you guys remember him being very sweaty at Arizona. And he coached there from 2009 to 2011. I'm counting the year that COVID canceled the tournament as a year they made the tournament because they would have. But he went to 8 NCAA tournaments in 12 years.
You said 2011. You meant 2021.
Yes, 2009 to 2021. Thank you. So he was at Arizona for a while. Went to 8 tournaments in 12 years, 3 Elite 8s, 2 Sweet 16s. Obviously, he was let go from Arizona for, I guess you would describe it as probably impermissible benefits for recruits, paying players, essentially. which is something that's now pretty much illegal in college basketball.
And one of his assistants was investigated by the FBI for fraud. That was a much more serious criminal situation that was not really related to Sean Miller exactly, but the NCAA gave him one of those, you did not have institutional control or whatever, which is understandable. I mean, based on the rules as they were at that time, this assistant coach was like guiding players towards a specific agent who was giving kickbacks to the assistant coach directly. And then it came out in the investigation around that assistant that allegedly Sean Miller was paying the family of DeAndre Ayton $10,000 a month to come to school at Arizona.
Well, he's really good.
Yeah. But now just
not legal literally 1 or 2 seasons ago, but now
run that through a local Columbia, Missouri business and we're good to go.
Yeah, see, obviously something like that where the violations were him, were the benefit of the student, that I'm fine with that. Obviously,
the assistant coach not so much, but the stuff that was alleged by or towards Sean Miller.
In my opinion, there are coaches that are currently coaching that have committed far worse violations than Sean Miller did.
At least done the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Every year that they've been a coach.
Correct. Is Sean Miller? Sean Miller. I mean, he's obviously like one of the top names out there. He's going to be a hot commodity, assuming he wants to get back into coaching.
He's only been out this season.
Right. I mean, is that realistic for Missouri?
I think he was only making like $2 million a year at Arizona.
Well, it's crazy.
Yeah. So he was, and not that long ago, he was probably underpaid and probably due for a fat extension.
Yeah, I'm
if
sure
all that stuff hadn't come up.
There was several seasons where Sean Miller was at Arizona, Cuonzo Martin was at Missouri, and Sean Miller was making less money.
Yeah, for sure. So I think if we're talking about Sean Miller and the likelihood of him coming to Mizzou, I think that's when we should talk about teams or schools that Missouri might be competing against for the services of somebody like Sean Miller.
Yeah.
So let's pause on our coaching list because that's a big deal to think about as far as determining whether we have a shot at this guy. So like the biggest program that'll be hiring a coach is Louisville, as far as we know so far.
Yeah.
And even anybody that's like on the hot seat or anything, I still feel like Louisville's the biggest, most storied program that's going to be hiring a coach.
Agree.
There's no reason that they would not look at Sean Miller unless they're just so scared of any sort of violations in any coach's history, because obviously Rick Pitino situation and now Chris Mack, they might be just looking for like the squeakiest clean
Cuonzo Martin
coach imaginable.
Kim Anderson
ran a clean program. So did Cuonzo Martin. So does he currently.
Well, so with that logic, is Missouri looking for somebody that's, a little rough around the edges?
Maybe Missouri's more willing to go out on a limb against somebody that's been in trouble before because they're like, this squeaky clean thing is not working so much. I don't think Sean Miller would be too much of an overcorrection, though.
No, probably not. Comparatively to what we currently have, maybe.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
So Louisville could definitely make a run at Sean Miller, but I still think they might want to shy away from anybody that's had impermissible benefits and stuff like that in their past.
That's a good point.
And I also think that current Seton Hall coach Kevin Willard, that is actually my prediction to take over at Louisville. He has worked under Rick Pitino in the past. Both with the Boston Celtics and at Louisville. And he also coached Iona. And his father, Ralph Willard, was the associate head coach at Louisville at one point. So I think I was actually looking at Kevin Willard as maybe like a Mizzou guy from Seton Hall. But I really think if he wants to move,
go right ahead.
It would be for the Louisville job.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be fine if Louisville Went with Kevin Willard.
Yeah, another school that's currently without a coach is Maryland, which is probably also a better job than Missouri.
Yeah.
But probably below Louisville in my mind.
Yes, I agree. So Maryland is going to have plenty of candidates that want that job. I even saw on like a Maryland fan site, Kim English mentioned as maybe a candidate to replace Mark Turgeon. So
He's from Baltimore.
yeah, and George Mason beat Maryland this year.
Yes, they did.
So Louisville, Maryland, not super huge competition. Like nationally, yeah, that'd be competition for Mizzou. And again, if we're talking about Sean Miller, then he's gonna want to be considered for the highest openings possible.
Yeah.
Unless Missouri has some way to sweeten the deal that we don't know about, which is unlikely. Anybody else that would be competing for the services of Sean Miller in your mind?
Do you want me just to? I mean, I wrote down several schools.
Yeah, let's go
that
through
the coaches are probably on the hot seat, in danger of losing their jobs. Obviously, none of these jobs are open right now. But obviously, Tom Crean is going to be out at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Capel is on the hot seat at Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Bobby Hurley is probably on his way out at Arizona State. Kevin Keats is maybe.
It's warming out
for NC State.
Okay. I bet he's got one more year.
This is probably the most regional threat is Bruce Weber at Kansas State. But they've actually been okay this year. They are better than they were last year. They made an improvement. Patrick Ewing at Georgetown could be an interesting one. Laval Jordan at Butler.
Okay.
Butler's been pretty bad in the last few years in their standards.
Especially for their standards, yeah.
I wrote down Frank Martin at South Carolina, but honestly, I don't know. Like, they've actually been decent this year.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine.
Mike White at Florida. I think Florida would be immediately one of the best jobs on the market if they were to fire Mike White.
Oh, please make the NCAA tournament, Florida, please.
Yes. And then Kermit Davis at Ole Miss.
That'd be something.
Which Mike White has a connection to Ole Miss. So if he were to not be at Florida and Ole Miss fired their coach, they might do a little swapperoo or something. Yeah. I guess they wouldn't do a swap.
Kermit Davis goes to Florida.
I don't think that would work. So there's several programs that, that are honestly almost everybody I listed there. I feel like they're somewhat synonymous with Missouri as far as prestige and what they can pay. Butler's probably, here, I'll just go down the list.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to just go down the list again and tell me if you think it's a better job than Missouri or worse than Missouri.
Okay.
Okay, Georgia.
Worse.
Pittsburgh.
Worse.
Maryland.
Better.
Arizona State.
Better. I don't know. Even.
Even. Pittsburgh. I don't know. I would say Arizona State. I think Missouri might be a little bit better job than that.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's possible.
NC State.
Better.
That's tough because it's in the ACC. It's like a bottom feeder ACC team.
Yeah, but they've got the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Is wild.
Yeah. Kansas State.
Kansas State worse than Mizzou.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Slight step down probably. Yeah. Georgetown.
Better.
I would agree. Butler.
Jeez. Equal.
I would say Butler's probably a little bit better. South Carolina.
Worse.
Obviously, Florida is a better job.
Better.
Ole Miss.
Worse.
Okay, so Missouri's kind of right there in the middle of all those.
Yeah.
And honestly, depending on what they're willing to pay, could go up a couple notches, could come down a couple.
Yeah, I would say, judging by how aggressive they went after Cuonzo Martin, if they do that again, then that jumps them up higher on that list.
Right. I wonder if that almost makes the job look more attractive with looking at how much Cuonzo's making right now. Obviously, it's not the same administration.
They're probably not going to do quite such an insane contract.
Well, that sounds good.
Buyouts and stuff.
Yeah.
But, again, sometimes you got to do crazy stuff to get the guy you want.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't go too crazy this time. If he gets fired. All right. Back to Sean Miller.
It kind of sucks that literally every word we'll say today is but he might be retained.
Yeah. But it happens so fast. Like, we got to get these names out
Got to
there.
get them out. Gotta let the people know.
Back to Sean Miller. We should have gone through all that before we started talking about names, but that's fine.
I thought, okay, yeah. Maybe.
It was perfect. Back to Sean Miller.
Is that realistic for Missouri?
Yes, I think it's somewhat realistic. I think they could pay well enough. They wouldn't have to be buying out his contract.
Yeah.
Because he's not coaching anywhere right now. And
it seems crazy to sometimes pair certain schools with certain coaches. Like, I feel like Tom Crean and Georgia is a good example where I was like, I didn't know if Missouri was a realistic option for Tom Crean.
Yeah.
When they were hiring a coach back when they were.
Right.
And because that was the same year they hired Cuonzo was when Tom Crean was out there.
Yeah.
And he ends up taking an even probably worse job than Missouri. So, you'll be surprised sometimes where some of these, successful coaches or that have been successful other places, you'll be surprised sometimes where they'll end up.
Yeah. And if you are Missouri and you're very serious about Sean Miller, you are telling him, we can pay more than you getting paid at Arizona. And look at the football side and look at the NIL stuff that the state of Missouri has embraced and think about what you could do with that here in Columbia. That's got to be part of the pitch to a guy like Sean Miller is like, you're not going to say like, hey, you were cheating before and now it's legal. That's what I would say if I was talking to him. Yeah. But I think there's a case to be made there that it could be a good fit. It might be a little bit unrealistic, and
got St. Louis right down the road though. And if you're even mildly successful, you're going to be a hero.
Yeah. Now, before you get too excited about Sean Miller, I do want to point out a couple things about his coaching history so far. So, he coached Xavier, and before he was the coach there, Thad Matta was the coach. Thad Matta went on to coach for a long time at Ohio State, but Thad Matta had Xavier in KenPom ranked 23rd, 20th, and 21st in his 3 seasons there. So Sean Miller was taking over a really good program from Thad Matta at that point and just kept it going, but didn't necessarily build a program up. And the same is true for Arizona. Before Sean Miller was at Arizona, let me pull up their history. They had legendary coach Lute Olson, who had them as like a championship contender every year. They did have like I don't know what the situation was there. They had 2 other coaches in back-to-back seasons while they were trying to figure out what to do after Lute Olson retired. But Arizona had gone to the NCAA tournament for like a crazy number of years in a row before Sean Miller took over. And so again, he just kept what was already going on. He just kept it rolling, which there's something to be said for that. And obviously he was very successful. Lots of NCAA tournament appearances, good recruiting, all that stuff. But he has zero reputation as a program builder or anybody or a guy that's even had to take over a struggling program. So that's one knock on his resume, I would say.
That's fair.
Another guy that has Power 5 coaching experience is Steve Forbes. He's currently at Wake Forest, and his coaching resume is very interesting. And there's a case to be made that he actually would be a really good fit in Columbia. And that is just like geographically, he's kind of been all over the place, but he definitely has ties to the Midwest. So he was born in Iowa. He went to college at Southern Arkansas. He was an assistant at Idaho, Louisiana Tech, Illinois State, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Wichita State. Plenty of Midwestern
Basically
representation
jumped
there.
all around the state of Missouri.
Exactly. And he was a head coach in D1 at East Tennessee State, and then now Wake Forest.
I feel like his name was like a hot name for several coaching cycles in a row. Like I feel like his name was mentioned when Missouri was looking to hire last time.
Yeah.
And whenever that was, 2016 or whatever.
Right.
And when he was at East Tennessee State.
Yeah.
Now he's at Wake Forest.
Correct. And his what he's been able to do at both of those stops at D1 places is pretty impressive. So at East Tennessee, before he showed up, they were coached by a guy named Murray Bartow. And they were like triple-digit KenPom team, sometimes in the 300s. His last 3 seasons there, they were 319, 243, 218. Forbes takes over. They only have, in his 5 seasons, they only had 1 year where they finished outside the top 100 in KenPom. That was his first season. They got as high as 56th in KenPom his final season. KenPom says they would have been an 11 seed in the NCAA tournament if it had happened. And while he was there, they won 24, 27, 25, 24, and 30 games. And then, of course, he was promptly hired by Wake Forest. And Wake Forest was really bad the last 3 years under Danny Manning. They won 11 games, and 13 games. Steve Forbes' first season, they were ranked 175 in KenPom, only won 6 games all year. This year, they're 30th and have won 23 games. They're 23-8.
That's amazing, like how a coaching change can be that big of a change.
So he's kind of like the opposite of Sean Miller in that he's gone to places that were terrible and turned them around in a hurry.
Really quickly, yeah.
And the best I could find is he's making $2 million a year currently at Wake Forest. Now, he is going to be I think he's going to be the hottest name.
Probably.
He's had...
How old is he?
He's
a little bit older than
56 years old.
Okay.
So, not incredibly old. He's got another easy 10, 15 years coaching. And, man, he's a guy that it would be really successful in Columbia, in my opinion.
Right.
But there's going to be so much competition for him, including Wake Forest. I mean, they're going to scrounge together as much money as they possibly can find to try to extend him this offseason and get him to stick around. But he doesn't necessarily have ties to Wake Forest. He doesn't have really solid ties to any blue blood program. So I don't think there's a school out there that he's like waiting to become the head coach at. So if you're Missouri, I think you got to try really hard and go after Steve Forbes. I think he would be.
Yeah, you got to make the call. I don't know if he'd be interested, but you absolutely have to ask.
You want to take the next one?
Yes.
I only have one more noteworthy name in this section.
Actually, you know what? That's the last guy I wrote down. That's
okay.
Kind of like somebody who's already been experienced in D1.
Okay, well, let me give you a name to get excited about.
Okay.
And it is Andy Kennedy. I'm being a little bit sarcastic because I can anticipate that would not be seen as an exciting hire by the Mizzou fan base, but let me make the case for Andy Kennedy. Obviously, he coached at Ole Miss from 2007 to 2018. The worst season he had at Ole Miss, they finished the regular season ranked 108th in KenPom, 108. That was the only season they finished outside the top 100. He only went to 2 NCAA tournaments, but Ole Miss was not investing in their basketball program. That was like, they were probably right there with Mississippi State and Alabama as far as obviously football is what anybody cares about. So they didn't really put a lot of money into their basketball program. They're starting to now. They thought they were definitely upgrading when they hired Kermit Davis. But also, whoever edited the Andy Kennedy Wikipedia page is a big fan of him. Because
it's probably him.
It's possible. They have this whole section of his accomplishments at Ole Miss. And it's pretty impressive, honestly. He ranks 18th in SEC history in career wins. He's one of only 23 coaches in the history of the SEC with 100 regular season SEC wins. And he is the only Ole Miss coach to accomplish that.
I was going to say, he's got to be one of the better coaches Ole Miss has ever had.
He is their career wins leader. He has the 5th most wins in SEC history by a coach in his by a coach at one school.
It's kind of one of those things where, you know, he'd been around for a while. I feel like schools and fan bases just get, I don't know, just feel complacent or get a little tired or just feel like restless for a change, even when it may not be the best option. And I definitely think that was the case for Andy Kennedy. Like, he was doing pretty well, but I feel like they were just like kind of bored. They just wanted a change.
And there was a lot of big name coaches going to SEC schools.
Right.
And
kind of the arms race.
Yeah. And they kind of were in a weird situation where they had a guy who had been successful but couldn't get them over the hump. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think obviously we know the kind of recruiting situation that Missouri's in, having St. Louis and Kansas City right there. Mm. And we know that they're more committed to their basketball program than Ole Miss was then and probably now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's impressive what he did at a school like Ole Miss that just has never really prioritized basketball. But I almost feel like what he's done in the last couple of seasons may be just as much or even more impressive.
Right. So he gets fired at Ole Miss, goes to UAB, where he was an assistant previously. And his first season there, actually, let me tell you, before he gets there, they are, not a great team. 4 years with the previous head coach, they're like around 200 in KenPom. Okay. Andy Kennedy takes over. Year 1, they're 102. They win 22 games. This year, year 2, they're 56th in KenPom. They're 23-7, and they are going to be Conference USA. They're not going to be regular season champs because of North Texas, but they're going to be right there competing for the Conference USA tournament championship and trying to get a berth to the NCAA tournament. And I don't think he's going to be at UAB next year.
No, probably not.
I think he'll be moving on to someplace better. And that it's not going to be a super sexy hire, taking a retread guy that was fired from an SEC program previously. And Mizzou fans would be right if they said, well, he was fired from a program that's objectively worse than Mizzou.
Right, and even when he was fired, I don't know. Without this UAB stint, I don't think I would have been interested. But for him to show that he went to UAB and has turned a program around, and with a school with probably not very many resources for recruiting and that kind of stuff, it's really pretty impressive what he's been able to do and how legitimately like a good team they are. I feel like he is absolutely capable of turning around a struggling program.
And he's obviously has recruiting ties to the entire SEC footprint from coaching at Ole Miss and at UAB. He was an assistant there before. And he was also an assistant coach at Cincinnati. So it's a little bit more Midwest ties there. Yeah.
Not a flashy hire at all, but one that I think would maybe be viewed fairly negatively at the time, but would maybe have a chance to change people's tunes, though, if it went pretty well.
And he is only making, as far as I could tell, $725,000 a year.
Yeah, that's
so you're talking about a manageable buyout, and you could double his salary plus some at Mizzou. So now let's talk about some mid-major coaches. You can start us off with that.
Okay. Speaking of North Texas, you brought him up shortly ago. Just a short time ago. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Grant McCaskland, who is at North Texas currently. He's in his 5th season at North Texas. This year, they're 22-4 currently, and in KenPom, they're 44th. So that sounds pretty good for a school like North Texas. The first couple of years there, they were okay. They were decent his 4th season, but actually, in the 4th season, they made the NCAA tournament last year. which would have been last year,
Gotcha.
and they made it to the round of 32.
Right.
As a 13 seed, they knocked off 4-seeded Purdue last year. So, and they followed that up with obviously a great season this year. So he's 45 years old, so definitely kind of a younger guy who's been around a little bit, but is probably looking to take the next step this year. I would be surprised if he's at North Texas next year.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of year you dream of in his position.
Yeah.
You know, they're 15-1. Probably their regular season's over. Oh, they actually have 2 games left. So they're currently 15-1 in Conference USA.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice about him when I was kind of doing some research is when you look at the tempo that North Texas plays at, they are 358th in tempo.
Wow.
And that is out of 358. So
Interesting.
they are the slowest school, actually tied with Virginia for slowest.
That's unreal.
Yeah. Usually Virginia is down there completely by themselves.
That's not super. That doesn't excite me a lot. I don't know why. I mean, if you're winning, you're winning.
Yeah.
But it's not like a super exciting brand of basketball to watch, especially if it takes a few years to turn things around. That could be kind of painful.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where if they're winning, then it's like, who cares? But
Yeah.
when a team that plays like that is losing or not making shots, stuff like that, then it can get ugly in a hurry. He did previously coach at Arkansas State, so
Yeah, wasn't he only there for like one season?
correct. He played at Baylor, so yeah, seems like a very good option. Definitely an up and comer, and he will definitely not be at North Texas next year.
Okay, I got one more for you.
Let's hear it.
That's kind of a fringe candidate, I feel like. I don't know that he's worth a serious look, but I'm going to throw out Casey Alexander.
Okay.
He is at Belmont currently. Before that, he was at Lipscomb from 2013 to 2019.
When they beat Missouri? Yes.
Yes. And he's been at Belmont from 2020 to current. So that's 3 seasons. In the 3 seasons at Belmont, they've been 26-7, 24-3, and this year they're 22-5. And they're 78th in KenPom. So he's 49 years old, so still kind of a younger guy. He's been great at Belmont, but I feel like that's historically a school that's usually pretty good. They're going to be making the jump to the Missouri Valley Conference next year. Definitely a name. I think he could probably see an upgrade. I don't know if Missouri will be a realistic landing spot or not.
Would it be not realistic because you think he could go someplace better, or you think he needs one more spot before a place like Missouri should really look hard at him?
I don't know. He was I feel like he was okay at Lipscomb, but I mean, I guess he's been around for almost 10 years now, I guess, as a head coach. I guess it could be realistic that he can.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I actually feel like Missouri might be a little better job than he might get, but
His last year at Lipscomb is crazy. They were like 300th in KenPom while he was there, and his last season they were 45th. That's an incredible improvement.
Yeah.
And he's got him from triple digits up to 78th in KenPom this year. Much faster tempo also.
Yeah.
At one point, when he was at Lipscomb, they were the 5th fastest in the country. That could be fun.
That excites me.
Yeah. I did not even have him on my list, so I'm going to have to write him down.
As a Missouri State basketball supporter, I would be happy if he wanted to go somewhere else now that he's going to be in the Missouri Valley Conference next year.
Okay, I got another name for you. It is Todd Golden of San Francisco. He's only been there 3 seasons, but they're 23rd in KenPom this year. And he did take over a pretty good program from Kyle Smith, who is now coaching at Washington State. So it seems like maybe Smith did some of the hard work turning the program around a little bit, but he's kept it going and improved on where they were before. And he's another guy that is most likely not going to be at his current spot next year.
He's paid pretty well, though, right?
True.
So they might be trying to hang on to him.
Yeah, he's being paid over $1 million a year. 1.4 is what I found. So not as much of a room to give him a huge raise, but they still could do it. And there's the fact that you'd have to buy him out. This is true of all of these guys that currently have jobs.
Yeah, not Sean Miller.
True. Yeah. Missouri would have to buy out the current contract, but those terms are way more favorable than when you're just trying to get rid of a guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was an assistant for 2 years at Auburn, so a little bit of SEC experience there.
San Francisco really reminds me of San Francisco Oven. Great restaurant, great calzones.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I'm hungry.
That's what San Francisco makes me think of. Another name I want to throw out there is Matt McMahon, currently at Murray State.
Another school that's going to be in the Missouri Valley Conference next year.
He is, one thing about Todd Golden, he's only 36 years old.
Wow.
Matt McMahon, 43 years old. He's at Murray State, most famous for recruiting Ja Morant and putting him in the NBA.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Which that was like a complete accident. Like one of the assistants saw him when they were recruiting somebody else, but he ended up at Murray State, and they're
amazing this year.
Yeah, they've been really solid, and he's a guy that I don't think is going to be there this time next year. They're undefeated in the Ohio Valley Conference, 18-0, 25th in KenPom.
I think they only have 2 losses on the whole year, right?
Yeah, 28-2. Yeah, their regular season is complete.
That's crazy.
And they have an insane single season improvement. They started the year 128th in KenPom, and now they are 25th.
What's their tempo? I bet it's pretty fast.
Not 250th.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But they've been good for a little while, so that's not super shocking. They went to back-to-back NCAA tournaments in 2018 and 2019 under McMahon, but I think he's going to capitalize on this incredible season.
Yeah, I mean they're a legit 5-6 seed in the tournament this year.
Yeah, very good. That's another thing to think about though, is when Missouri's going to be making this decision, they might legitimately have to wait on guys to be done in the NCAA tournament before they can really get serious.
That's exactly right.
But they'll be talking to agents, obviously, in the meantime. Matt McMahon, another guy that I would consider. And before I name who I think is the best mid-major candidate, I have a couple that... I want to talk about Drew Valentine from Loyola Chicago. He's only 30 years old. This is his first season there. He was a dynamite assistant and took over for Porter Moser, who went to Oklahoma. And I think he will not be there very long. I think he's going to be a hot up-and-coming coach in the next few seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think Missouri would be jumping the gun, maybe doing it a little bit too early on him since he's only been a head coach 1 year.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's still potentially kind of riding the coattails of what Porter Moser did there.
Yeah.
Loyola's good this year. They're not as good as they have been in recent years. But, yeah, it's his first season as a head coach. I agree. I think it would be a little early.
Your turn for a mid-major candidate.
I'm going to bring up a guy that just has a special place in my heart for a very specific reason. His name is Darian DeVries, which is my last name. He coaches at Drake, and he has kind of a strange coaching career. He was an assistant coach at Creighton from 2001 to 2018. So 18 years as an assistant coach in the same place, and then got his first head coaching job with Drake. And he has been pretty good there. Let's see. Last year was their best season. They were 26-5. They were a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. This year they're 22-9, and will probably not be in the NCAA tournament, but they're still pretty good. One really interesting thing about Drake and Darian DeVries is he has a son, Tucker, who is a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. He is a freshman this year, 6'7", small forward, averaging almost 14 points a game as a freshman. So that would absolutely be a package deal. Yep. Wherever Darian DeVries is going, his son's coming with him. He's a great player, and has a pretty high ceiling.
And that's something to think about with any of these coaches is with how easy it is for guys to transfer. You got to imagine they're going to either bring a player and or a recruit with them, and nothing more obvious than the coach's son, who could have played elsewhere, but is playing for him at Drake, there's no reason to think he wouldn't come along to Mizzou if that were the case.
He's 46 years old, so again, pretty young guy.
Yeah, that would be. I would categorize that as maybe one of the less flashy hires that Missouri could make.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that you bring him up because the next guy I want to talk about spent exactly 1 season at Drake, between stints at Furman and his current job at Colorado State, and that is Nico Medved, and he is more of that program builder type that I have been kind of looking for. So he took Furman from 342nd in KenPom, a 9-win team, to 106th in 23-win team.
In how many seasons?
In 4 total seasons. Then just 1 year at Drake before he was hired away to Colorado State. First year, they were 180th in KenPom. They've just almost perfectly, steadily stair-stepped their way to this year, 32nd in KenPom, 23-4 currently, the number 22 offense in the country.
That's Colorado State.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically everywhere he's been, they start off bad and just like perfectly get better every year. Like there's nothing more attractive than that. Is like no steps back, just perfectly we're getting a little bit better every year, and he's done it at some pretty difficult places to win.
And what I could find was he's currently making $775,000 a year, so that could be
in line for a huge
tripled at Mizzou potentially.
Easily, probably more than that.
And but for all of those same reasons, he's going to be a hot name for anybody that has a coach opening.
Yeah, Cam, I'm just going to come out and say it. This is my number one candidate.
Okay.
On this coaching search, Nico Medved is number one in my books as far as a guy who has been good everywhere he's been. Like we just said, he knows how to turn around a struggling program. It's almost like a guaranteed improvement within 2 to 3 seasons. He's a young guy where we can, like you said, he can stand to have his salary improved tremendously. I always kind of seem to gravitate towards the up-and-comers. I think that typically those guys are, higher ceiling potentially. They've got usually a little more energy on the recruiting trail. Sometimes I tend to think guys that have been successful elsewhere don't want to grind as hard because they've just, they've been there, they've made it already. Yeah. And sometimes I think, the up-and-comers are just looking for their shot to blow up, and I think Nico Medved is just attractive in almost every way possible.
Yeah, he's originally from Minnesota. Obviously, if you don't know, Furman is in South Carolina.
I didn't know that.
So he has some experience in the SEC footprint. He was also an assistant at Minnesota and was an assistant at Colorado State before being the head coach at Furman. He's towards the top of my list, but I think he's going to be a hot commodity. Missouri's going to have to really get serious with the money if they want to bring him in. I think lots of competition.
Yep.
So I only have one name left on the mid-major list, and I kind of want to save him for last. So if you have anybody else.
We've talked about everybody I wrote down.
So there's one guy we haven't talked about, and that is Kim English. And we're going to have some people mad at us probably or disappointed, but I don't think Kim English is the move. Now, and it's for the same reason that I don't think Drew Valentine is the move. 1 year of head coaching experience, I think you're just asking for trouble. I mean, I know it's very different and you can't really compare these two, but just surface level comparison, it reminds me of Barry Odom, who he hadn't even been a head coach yet. So that's slightly different, but he had more, I don't know.
He's older.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it scares me. It scares me that you would bring him in and it go poorly and it messes up his relationship with the school and it creates a messy situation where you've got a guy that you don't want to get rid of,
right,
because of his ties.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of there with you. Obviously, everybody knows the connection, and it's special. And I honestly think Kim English is, I almost said Kim Anderson. I honestly think Kim English is going to be a really good coach. I don't know that he's ready to make the jump to high Division I basketball yet. But he's really young and he's really talented. He's a great recruiter. He's solid and he's going to be a good coach someday. I like you said, I don't think this is the time necessarily though to jump in. He's 14-14 this year at George Mason. They're 7-8 in the Atlantic 10. I'm sure they're going to continue to get better, but I think honestly one of the biggest things though is kind of like what you said. I'm just afraid to hire another Mizzou alum, and that went terribly with Kim Anderson. It went not very good with Barry Odom, and I just don't know that we want to turn around and do that a third time in a decade. In between the two sports, and it's just so easy for things to not go well, and then you're just stuck with an awkward situation. You burn bridges, and it's just I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to pull the trigger on that yet.
Yeah, and I'm looking at his KenPom profile right now. Their rating this year is better than any of the past six seasons under their previous head coach at George Mason, but not dramatically different. There's a lot of 500-ish seasons under him. However, he was considered the lead recruiter for Kennedy Chandler, getting him to go to Tennessee, which is a huge deal. So he's got that. Obviously, he can recruit. And I could totally see this 500 season just being a really nice building block for him at George Mason, and he's going to win 20 games next year and probably not look back. And so George Mason is not, bottom of the barrel Division I by any means. So it's unfortunate. I wish the timing was a little bit different. I wish this was happening when he had been there for 3 or 4 seasons and had shown that he could sustain it and build a program. Then this would be a no-brainer, I think.
Right.
Some people think it's a no-brainer anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. And maybe he gets hired this year by a bigger school and ends up working out. It's absolutely possible. In fact, I think that he could be a name that gets thrown around for the Maryland job because he's from Baltimore. Obviously has a lot of ties to that area. That'd be a pretty big jump, but not impossible.
Yeah, and the jump from George Mason to Mizzou would not be a crazy thing either. That wouldn't send shockwaves through the college basketball world. The only thing that would be weird about it is him only being a head coach for 1 season.
Right. Yeah, I mean, is it weird that I'm almost turned off by the because he has ties to Mizzou?
I think.
Am I overthinking that?
Like 10 years ago, you would potentially you'd be like, yeah, that's the best case scenario.
Right.
But
we've seen it go wrong.
Yeah.
Two very recently times.
Right.
In
dramatic fashion
yes.
as well. And we're seeing ourselves be better off on the football side of things with
completely new blood.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Next season, would you rather have Kim English or Cuonzo Martin?
Kim English.
Did you know I was going to ask that?
No, but I was able to. I wasn't even close.
You decided
honestly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm there with you.
I don't think I would take every name that I've mentioned that either one of us had said
for sure
this entire episode
over Cuonzo Martin.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, these are up and comers in college basketball. Of course, we would take all these guys over Cuonzo Martin.
Name we haven't mentioned, but I just want to say it real quick, is TJ Otzelberger. Iowa State turned them around incredibly. He was hired by Desiree Reed-Francois at UNLV.
Yeah.
Wasn't even that good there, though, and then was hired by just like a disaster of a team in Iowa State, and now they're going to be NCAA tournament team.
Yeah, that's a weird one, but he's not being paid very much, right?
Correct. $1 million a year.
Yeah, that's really low for a Power 5 conference team.
He's only 44 years old.
Yeah.
Ties to the AD.
I'd take him.
Yeah.
Would you rather have, this is going to sound kind of stupid because we already said everybody we talked about, but you would take Chris Mack over Cuonzo?
Yes.
I probably would too. I'm kind of out on Chris Mack, but I would probably still take him over Cuonzo Martin.
Yeah, Chris Mack's situation is weird. It's like I said, you could do a 30 for 30 on it and hear some weird stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want to
watch.
Maybe you don't want to be a part of that. But there's something else I was going to say. Oh, I wanted to mention real quick a program that took a chance on a coach who had NCAA issues in his past, and that is Houston with Kelvin Sampson.
Oh, my.
So he has been there since 2015. He got in trouble really, by today's standards, for very little. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the stuff that went on in Indiana, it was like too many phone calls. Okay? Nothing too crazy. And they won 25 games his last year at Indiana.
It's trying too hard,
I guess. And at Houston, his first year they were 214th in KenPom, and right now they're 6th.
Yeah,
and last year they were 5th.
Yeah,
they went to the Final Four.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that experiment worked out very well for
Houston. When Houston hired Kelvin Sampson, his first year at Houston was also Kim Anderson's first year at Mizzou.
Oh.
So that's just a little like alternate history thing. I wasn't paying as much of attention to the coaching search back then, but I mean, there's probably somebody that was like, hey, we should give Kelvin Sampson a look. And there's probably lots of people who were just like, no, he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Maybe he is a bad guy.
He might be.
But
I don't think he is.
He was making too many phone calls.
He's a good coach.
Yeah. So that's just a little bit of my argument for, and also, that's not even mentioning like Bill Self and Will Wade are coaching basketball
Bruce Pearl.
without even an inkling by anybody that they're not going to be coaching anytime soon.
Not losing any sleep at night at all.
So if that's the case, then please, the University of Missouri, do not be worried about.
Yeah, I think we've learned that lesson at this point. You got a top 5?
So it was really hard for me to come up with a top 5 and kind of differentiate between these guys because they have different they're coming from different places in their coaching career. I have at number 5 Grant McCasland from North Texas.
At number 5, I have Grant McCasland from North Texas.
Wow, incredible.
Wow.
Number 4, I have Steve Forbes from Wake Forest. It's I dropped him down because I think it's a long shot.
Yeah, that's fair. At number 4, I have Andy Kennedy.
Okay. Number 3, I have Nico Medved. I dropped him down a little bit because I thought it was a long shot. And so maybe I shouldn't have done that. I should have said, if you can get whoever you want, this would be my list. But I went a little bit more realistic with my top 2.
Okay. My number 3 is... Yeah, I already said my top. Okay, my number 3 is Sean Miller.
Okay.
And really the only reason I dropped him... Well, I mean, I don't know. I would say my top 3 could be unrealistic, but...
Okay. Number 2... Because of the realism factor, I have Andy Kennedy.
Okay.
I think he would say yes. I think Missouri could get him. I think he would do a good job. And I think with Andy Kennedy, now here I am settling for mediocrity, but I think worst case scenario for Andy Kennedy, he stabilizes the program and we're back to winning 20 games a year.
Yeah.
And I would love to be in a situation where we're thinking, should we get rid of Andy Kennedy because is there a better coach out there?
Right.
But maybe you're looking at a situation where he stabilizes things and then someone like Kim English is ready to come aboard.
Is this potentially, though, the best case scenario to try and hit a home run on a riskier hire whenever the program is struggling a little bit and anybody that wins 18 to 20 games is going to look better than what we currently have?
Yeah, this is probably the year to swing for the fences.
And not take an Andy Kennedy?
Yeah, that's totally a reasonable argument for that, 100%.
Okay, my number 2 is Steve Forbes. Okay. And I kind of went with the, like, if you could have anybody angle. Sure. I don't think Missouri is landing Steve Forbes, probably, or Sean Miller. But Steve Forbes is my number 2.
What about Steve Forbes, the billionaire of Forbes?
I wouldn't take him now.
Okay.
No experience at all.
If he wants to become a booster, though.
Now that I'd be on board for.
Okay.
Absolutely. We could have Steve Forbes the coach and Steve Forbes the booster
There we go.
working together.
Synergistically.
Synergies. Yes. Yeah.
Number one, I got Sean Miller.
Nice.
So I said I was trying to be realistic, and I think I made the case earlier that there's a realistic possibility for him.
I don't know where Missouri stands on some of these guys. I just have no idea. Like you can probably make the argument everybody on our list is somewhat realistic. All of these guys are gonna take the call. All of these guys are looking to move up, and like we've said, there isn't anybody on this list that just terrifies you as far as like you're never gonna have a shot to outbid somebody. Maybe Louisville. Maybe.
Yeah. A lot of this, honestly, is going to depend on
what can you pay,
who Louisville picks.
And
I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. Missouri, when they hired Cuonzo, he was being paid like one of the top coaches in the country.
Right.
Who do you got for number one?
Nico Medved.
Okay. Yeah, you told me that earlier. Yeah, I mean, I think this just shows that there's a handful of guys that I would consider basically home run hires.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sean Miller, Nico Medved, and Steve Forbes, I think would be incredible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would be surprised.
Yes.
Pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely.
With any of those three names.
Andy Kennedy is like a guy that I think would be super solid, and it's super doable, basically. And then the rest of the kind of mid-major up-and-comer guys, it's like they're going to go someplace better than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen guys like Nate Oates and Eric Musselman come to the SEC and not only win games, but recruit at a high level.
Yeah.
And as often as we've seen, more tenured coaches like Bruce Pearl and Rick Barnes do the same thing.
Yeah.
What we don't want to end up with is another Cuonzo Martin situation, or obviously worse than that. But I think as long as you are hiring an up-and-comer who has been dominating at their current level, or taking a swing at one of these big-name guys that have been around the block, I think it'll be fine. So, and I'm fully prepared for commenters to say that hiring Andy Kennedy would be Cuonzo Martin 2.0, and to that I would say I disagree. Just literally look at season by season, look at their coaching resume.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an upgrade. Yeah, honestly, everybody we named, I would probably be fine with today. And there's obviously some that I like more than others, but I am ready for a change. And I think pretty much everybody we listed has experience and has been successful.
Whether he's a long-term success or not, if they announced Kim English as the next head coach of Missouri basketball, people would be incredibly excited.
Okay, I'll even say I don't think that would be the right hire, but I'd still be excited.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd still be excited.
Like,
excited and hopeful.
yes.
Right.
And just, yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely one of those could be a home run hire.
Yeah. Man, I would just be like nervous for the whole operation. Like, if they're going that route, I would be
That would be interesting.
kind of nervous. Just like, please let this work.
Yeah.
That would be like Kim Anderson, like wanting Kim Anderson to work plus wanting Barry Odom to work times 100.
Yeah, I just don't think Kim English is ever going to have the recruiting struggles that Kim Anderson had.
No.
Like, they're just totally different, like, relationally.
Yeah.
And, like, Kim English already has way more Division I experience than Kim Anderson ever had, because, Anderson's coming from an entire career in Division II, and he just didn't have the relationships, and that's what recruiting is.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that English will always have up on Anderson in that conversation. But
So what's best case scenario? Missouri and Cuonzo part ways, and we end up with one of these 5 guys off of our list.
yeah,
Maybe I'm probably elevating Andy Kennedy, but I'd still take him.
yeah.
I don't know. So is that all the names?
I think so. I'm sure there's more out there.
Oh, there's a dozen other mid-major coaches that have been really successful that I kind of targeted ones that are peaking this year or last year, because I see them as most likely to make the jump. There's some that have been successful, but may
Right.
not quite be ready.
Okay, so if Missouri's looking for a new coach this year, what percentage do you put it at that we just talked about their next coach?
Honestly, this is like embarrassing, but there's probably a 25% chance that we
Really?
just talked about
I
it.
would have said 50.
I hope.
There's a lot of names out there, though.
Yeah. And the way I'm just remembering back to the football coaching search, and literally
Yeah.
like we were like, oh, there's a guy named Elijah Drinkwitz at Appalachian State. Been there 1 year, pretty good. That was like all we said about him.
Basically, yeah. But we
We're
did mention him.
Lucky
we,
to even mention his name.
We did, though.
We did talk about Blake Anderson quite a bit,
Yes,
and
we
he
did.
was a guy that they tried to hire.
Yeah, we had
So-
that covered.
We'll probably have talked about somebody that they try to hire.
Oh, for sure.
And
What-
then
if they don't, then that's a massive failure.
yeah.
If they don't, I have no hope.
But yeah, obviously there's names out there that we have no idea if Missouri's considering them. We don't know if Missouri's considering any of these guys.
And we don't know what schools are ultimately going to be looking for coaches in 2 weeks.
And most importantly, we do not know if Missouri and Cuonzo Martin will be mutually parting ways or not. So stay tuned for that.
Wishful thinking, man.
Yeah.
I have seen a couple of schools already, though, decide to mutually part ways with their coach, though. I think I've seen 2 or 3 current Division I teams that have already kind of fired their current coach.
Yeah.
So realistically, that could happen any day if Missouri were
The
to.
dominoes are going to start falling.
Yeah.
So, Coach, we apologize. We had to get ahead of
We're sorry,
the
Coach.
situation.
We're sorry.
We wish you the best
We wish you the best, and hope it's somebody else.
because you're definitely listening to this.
Yeah.
All right. That all for this week?
That's it.
Thanks, Coach, for listening, and special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above: Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan Lee, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Luis Hernandez, Tim Keynes, and Tyler Harshel.
Thank you, gents. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We are on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next week.